The world begins as a sound, a low hum that vibrates through the teeth and settles deep in the bones. It is a pressure before it is a noise, a steady weight on the chest and face. The air itself is a texture, a thick, churning mist that erases any sense of distance. There is no ground, no sky, only the sensation of being suspended in dense, clouded water, the grit of it felt on the skin. Limbs feel distant and disconnected, floating without purpose or weight. A thought forms without a voice to speak it. There is no world. There is only the constant, sourceless vibration and the feeling of a heavy blanket pressing in from all sides. The uniform grayness offers no purchase for the eyes, no edge or object to define a single point in the empty space. The pressure shifts, a subtle change in the rhythm of the drone that passes through everything. Then a crackle, a sound sharper than the rest, cuts through the drone. It has a rough, tearing edge that makes the air feel suddenly thin. Where the noise broke, a detail emerges from the grayness, a dark shape, tall and slow. Then another appears beside it. The mist thins not into clarity, but into a world of things. The shapes move with a human motion, but they are only silhouettes, their faces flat and featureless voids. A sudden coldness spreads through the stomach, and breath catches in the lungs, held there without thought. What are those things? The question is a feeling, not a sound. Cries and shouts are now audible, but they hang in the air, disconnected from the forms that drift through the smoke. There is no connection, no recognition. It is like watching unfamiliar objects being moved across a landscape. Great fear had emptied the world of faces for me. These figures have weight and mass, but they are not men. They are just dark patches against the unending gray. A face appears, inches away, its mouth open in a dark oval. The floating feeling collapses and gravity takes hold, pulling the weight of the body downward. A deep, bone-level ache begins to register in the legs and back. I am here. The thought is a simple fact. A hand presses down, and the palm registers the sharp, gritty texture of sand. The ground is solid underneath. Looking up, the sky is a low ceiling of dark, roiling smoke. The sourceless drone is now just one sound among many, mixed with shouts and the grinding of metal. Those dark shapes, the faceless things, resolve into men. They have arms and legs and move with purpose. There is no relief in the recognition, only a quiet cataloging of the scene. I was among men and things, on the beach. The world had returned, the weight of his head pulled his chin downward. It was a slow, heavy tilt, a surrender of the neck muscles, letting gravity draw his gaze away from the flat, gray ceiling of the sky. A dull pressure began to pulse just behind his eyes, a steady, quiet beat that matched the rhythm of nothing at all. The horizon line, once a clean division between air and earth, dropped out of view. His focus fell at first. There was no detail, only a vast, textured floor stretching out in every direction. It was a crowded place. The initial impression was of a gathering, a dense field of forms that covered the sand from the tide line to the scrub. But the crowd was silent. It did not move. As his eyes adjusted to the nearer distance, the forms resolved. They were not bodies. They were things. The thought formed, simple and without effect. So much stuff. His gaze began a slow, methodical journey from left to right, a sweep that cost a small, deliberate effort. It caught on the wood first. Dark, wet splinters of coconut logs, shattered into pieces. One section, half buried in the sand, had frayed into a coarse broom of fibers, each one a dark needle against the pale ground. He registered the wet sheen on its surface, the way the fibrous pulp held the moisture long after the surrounding sand had begun to dry. He imagined the rough, splintery texture under a hand, a rasp that could tear skin. The skin continued. A few feet past the log, the field of debris changed color. Sharp, White fragments of coral dotted the sand like broken teeth. They were small, hard, and bright. Where the wood absorbed the light, the coral seemed to throw it back, tiny glints that forced his eyes to narrow slightly. The pressure behind them intensified. He drew a breath and was aware of the air moving in and out of his lungs, a mechanical process that had no connection to the silent litter on the ground. The thought returned, a brief echo, so much. It trailed off, unfinished. He tried to roll his shoulders, a small motion to ease the tension of holding his head in one position. But the muscles in his neck and across his upper back did not yield. A deep, unfamiliar stiffness had begun to set in, a cold rigidity that felt less like muscle fatigue and more like a permanent fixture. It was a solid, unmoving block of tension that anchored the base of his skull to his spine. He paused his scan, waiting for the tightness to release. It did not. The dull throb in his head now had a counterpart, a deep, unyielding ache in his neck that was simply there. Looking down was now a state with a cost. His eyes resumed their slow, left-to-right path, carrying the new stiffness with them. The movement felt different now, more deliberate, as if he were turning a piece of machinery that needed oil. The gaze settled on a new shape. A discarded gas mask, half filled with sand. Its round, goggle eyes stared upward, the lenses filmed with grit. It was just an object, a piece of rubber and glass in the wrong place. Then another one, 10 feet away, lying on its side, the corrugated breathing tube curled like a dead serpent. He catalogued them without emotion. They were just more items in the endless inventory spread before him. The slow sweep of his gaze was the only motion, the sky was forgotten, the slow, stiff rotation of his head continued. The block of tension in his neck and shoulders was a solid thing now, a yoke he had to carry just to look at the ground. His gaze moved past the shredded wood and coral chips, cataloging more objects in its methodical sweep. A helmet, sitting upside down, its smooth, curved metal like the shell of a large, green egg. The light caught its curve without reflection, a dull matte surface. Next to it, a canvas pack, its rough, woven texture stained dark in patches, one strap torn loose. The contrast was simple, a pairing of smooth and rough, hard and soft. They were just objects, resting together, the sweep passed over more metal. Brass mortar-shell cases, scattered like fallen seeds. They had a different kind of sheen, a faint, oily gleam that hinted at their purpose. He felt a dryness in his throat, a thickness that made him want to swallow, but he didn't. The effort seemed too large. The objects were jumbled without hierarchy, a helmet no more important than a splinter of wood, a shell case no different from a piece of coral. The thought began to form, a low hum beneath the surface of his perception, it is the same. The sheer quantity of it all, the endless repetition of shapes and materials, began to press in on him, then the skin snagged. His eye fell on a shape that was not metal, not wood, not canvas. It was a form tangled in a pile of debris, different only in its lines. A human hand, palm up, was half buried in the gray sand. The fingers were slightly curled, as if in the middle of a gesture that had been interrupted. It looked like a dropped glove. As he focused on that small, pale shape, a change occurred inside him. A wave of exhaustion, profound and sudden, washed through his body. It was not the familiar ache of tired muscles. This was a deep, cellular weariness, a leaden weight that settled into his arms and legs, pulling them toward the earth. His limbs suddenly felt like foreign attachments, heavy and unresponsive. The equilibrium was gone, his body now carried a new, permanent gravity. He finally swallowed, a dry, sticky motion in his throat. The words arrived in his mind with the force of a discovery, a classification finally made clear, and of man himself, who was no more than litter on that beach. He looked from the hand to the rest of the shape it was attached to. The body was on its side, its posture awkward, a discarded thing. One leg was bent at an angle that had nothing to do with rest or sleep. Its uniform was bunched and twisted, tangled with the strap of a broken weapon. There was no sign of violence, only a profound and jarring stillness. It did not look like a person. It looked like one more item in the inventory, different only in material. He tried to shift his own weight from one foot to the other, but the effort was immense. The leaden feeling in his legs resisted the command. His gaze remained fixed on the form. The thought, no longer a hum but a flat, settled statement, landed with finality: it is all the same. The horror was not in the sight of the body, but in the effortless way it fit into the catalog. It belonged there. It was simply the last item on the list. The methodical scan was over. His gaze rested there. His gaze did not move. It was locked on the form tangled in the debris, the one that was not metal or wood. Time seemed to have stopped, but it hadn't. It was simply proceeding without his participation. He felt a tiny, abrasive friction, and became aware that he was grinding his teeth. A fine grain of sand, lodged somewhere in a molar, scraped against its opposite. The sensation was small, insignificant, yet it was the most immediate thing in the world. His body was a statue demanding stillness, conserving an energy it no longer believed it possessed. To move his eyes felt like a monumental decision. The ground hums with a steady rhythm, a deep bass vibration felt through the sand more than it is heard. The mind feels slow, syrupy, and the ears are full of a constant, high-pitched ring. That sound has always been there. The thought arrives without surprise. In the distance, mortars corrupt, but the explosions are no longer events. They are a recurring beat in a song that never ends, a pulse that has merged with the body's own. The whine of bullets passing overhead is a constant, like a flaw in the air itself, and the body no longer flinches. The brain, overwhelmed, has reclassified these noises from threat to environment. Gazing toward the tree line, small puffs of smoke appear silently, disconnected from the sounds that will follow. The air shimmers with heat and unseen things passing through it. The only sounds that truly register now are the small ones, the close ones. Then a new sound cuts through the rhythm, tiny and granular. It is the scrape of metal on stone, just a few feet away. A sudden, acute awareness of thirst sharpens in the throat, a dryness that coats the tongue. That sound is real. The other sound is not. The thought is clear and absolute. The body remains perfectly still, conserving its energy, but the eyes find the source. Another marine is shifting his position, his canteen nudging a white piece of coral. The sound is intensely physical, a texture felt in the teeth. The focus locks onto the object, the metal flask, its surface damp with condensation, moving with a slight, jerky motion. The man attached to it is secondary, just the mechanism causing the one real sound in a world of ambient noise. For a moment, it is the only thing happening. A thought arrives without urgency: check the ammunition. I look down at my hands. They seem like foreign objects, disconnected things covered in a fine gray dust that softens their lines. The fingertips are numb, distant. I issue the mental command to unclip the worn canvas pouch on my belt. Nothing happens. My hands remain still, resting on my legs. Why won't this work? The will is there, but the body does not respond. I try again, forcing the action into smaller, simpler pieces. Fingers, close. Thumb, push. The movement is clumsy, a fumbling, disjointed effort as if the connection between brain and muscle has frayed. The clip finally gives way with a dull click that sounds enormous in the quiet space of my attention. My fingers close around the cold, dusty metal of the magazine. I pull it free and hold it in my palm. Its weight is familiar, but for a long moment, I don't know what it is for. I just stare at the metal box, its purpose erased. A dull ache settles into the lower back, a complaint from the hard ground. The edges of vision seem to draw inward, a slight but persistent narrowing of the world. My gaze drifts across the sand and stops on a group huddled behind a splintered log. 2 men stare forward, but the third is slumped at an unnatural angle, his head low. He is quiet. The thought arrives without emotion. Beneath his still form, a dark patch soaks into the pale gray sand, slowly widening. No one turns toward him. The others remain fixed on the tree line, their bodies tense. He is not a casualty, just a shape that has stopped moving correctly. Many men had been hit there, but they weren't very noticeable. They simply became part of the background. The sun is hot on the back of the neck, a steady, pressing warmth. It brings a feeling of detachment, as if watching a silent film projected onto the shimmering air. It takes a long time. The thought is a simple observation. The back of the man's helmet is motionless against the heat rising from the beach. They quietly bled and died in the sand, without being conspicuous. The sound of it is the absence of sound. It is a slow, internal process, marked only by the patient, capillary action of the dark stains spreading beneath him. Beside the still form, water drips from a piece of gear, a slow, steady rhythm falling onto the dry sand. His head is turned away, his face unseen. He is not a person dying, but a shape slowly leaking into the ground, becoming part of the wet, dark texture of the beach itself. I turn my head, a slow rotation in the gritty sand. My own tongue feels thick and dry, a clumsy weight in my mouth. The Marine lying next to me is still, his eyes locked forward. My focus settles on him, not as a man, but as an assembly of textures. The rough, herringbone weave of his uniform, the individual threads visible in the harsh light. The salt-caked leather of his boots, cracked and gray over the ankles. The dull glint of sweat on the steel helmet buckle near his jaw. I watch the tiny, rhythmic pulse of a vein in his temple, a silent, persistent motion. His name, it was a common name, a name I knew just a moment ago, flickers at the edge of my mind and then goes out. The memory is gone, replaced by a simple inventory. The world outside shrinks to nothing. All awareness contracts, collapsing inward to the landscape of the body itself. The early numbness has burned off completely, leaving behind a detailed map of misery. A single, sharp point of coral digs into the left hip, a localized pressure that has become a permanent fixture of consciousness. This part hurts. A tiny, involuntary shift of the body to escape it only transfers the weight to an elbow, where wet sand has rubbed the skin raw. The burn is immediate and sharp. Now this part. A deep, cellular exhaustion has taken root, a fatigue that feels less like tiredness and more like the engine of the body seizing from a lack of oil. The dull, grinding ache in the knees is a low, constant signal of physical degradation, a simple truth that requires no thought at all, only endurance. Thirst is no longer a background thought, it has become a physical presence. My tongue is a dry rasp, scraping like sandpaper against the roof of my mouth. I run it over my lips and feel the skin crack. The heat shimmers, making the air itself look brittle and dry. For a moment, a hallucination of water fills my mind, the memory of its cold, metallic taste, clean and perfect. Water. Just water. The thought is an obsessive, silent pulse. My eyes fix on my own canteen, lying on the sand. Its metal surface is beaded with condensation, looking cool and impossibly distant. The 2 feet of gritty space between us might as well be miles. The desire is a physical pull, a gravity of its own, but the inertia of the body is stronger. A profound paralysis takes over, a stalemate between extreme need and extreme exhaustion. I remain still, trapped by the dry reality of my own throat. The sharp point under my hip finally becomes an imperative. A decision is made to shift the leg. The command is sent, but the response is sluggish, delayed. The leg moves not as a limb, but as a separate object I have to drag with the muscles of my torso. It is a clumsy, inefficient motion, a dead weight that resists. As it moves, the boot, caked in drying sand, scrapes a shallow trough a few inches long. It is an interesting mechanical problem, observing this failing piece of equipment. The body is now in it. I am simply a mind located inside, watching the controls become less and less responsive. The leg settles into its new position, and a tingling fire of pins and needles erupts as blood returns to the compressed flesh. The feeling is distant, just another signal from the failing machine. I will have to move it again later. The thought is a simple, practical note, a maintenance reminder for a tool that is wearing out. A slow drift of wind stirs the smoke clinging to the ground, pushing it in a new direction toward the sluggish, gray waves at the water's edge. The air that replaces it is different. My nostrils flare without a conscious command, processing a new set of data. It is a complex layering of smells, a texture that can almost be tasted. First, the sharp, chemical bite of burnt cordite, a smell that has been in the air all along but was previously unnoticed. Then, the salty, organic smell of low tide. And beneath both of those, a new scent, thick and coppery, that coats the back of the throat. The air is different now. The thought is a simple acknowledgement. This new metallic quality is just another piece of the environment, a signal that quickly settles into the ambient background, as if it had always been there. The coppery smell clings to the back of the throat, a thick coating. A slight, rolling nausea rises and is just as quickly suppressed. The mental energy required for disgust is absent. The brain supplies the label for the scent, a simple fact delivered without emotional weight: blood. That is what that is. The thought is a quiet confirmation. The heat seems to make the smell heavier, pressing it down toward its source. It rises from the dark, saturated patches of sand, from the quiet litter that punctuates the beach. The smell is not a horror, merely data. It confirms that the still forms are organic, that they are decomposing into the ground they lie on. The information is processed, filed away. The air has changed, and the reason is now known. I close my eyes against the glare, a brief moment of red-black relief from the unending grayness. When they open again, the world is wrong. A lurching sensation rises from the stomach, a feeling of vertigo on solid ground. The horizon line, where the sea meets the sky, is no longer level. It is canted at an impossible angle, as if the entire island is listing slowly to one side like a sinking ship. I know it cannot be true, but the feeling is absolute, a powerful physical certainty that overrides logic. It is all going to fall. The thought is not a fear but a fact delivered by my own senses. My right hand reflexively digs its fingers deep into the sand, trying to anchor myself to a world that has come loose. The grit packs under my nails, a small, solid truth in the dizzying illusion. The world feels profoundly untrustworthy now, as if all its shells and weapons and quiet bodies are about to begin a slow, unstoppable slide down the impossible incline and into the waiting sea. How long has it been? The question is meaningless. Minutes and hours have collapsed into a single, gray moment, the internal clock broken. The only way to know is the sun, a pale, indistinct circle swimming behind a permanent veil of smoke. The skin on the right side of my face feels warmer now, a slow, creeping heat that wasn't there before. My gaze drops back to the sand. The shadows cast by the debris have stretched, their shapes elongating and distorting. Earlier, a splinter of dark would lay in a patch of direct light. Now, the long shadow from a discarded helmet has crawled over it, covering it completely. The shadow moved. The thought is a revelation, the only proof that anything has changed at all. Time is not a series of events anymore, just this slow, silent movement of light across the sand. For a second, the world is green. It is an intense, impossible color that appears without warning behind the eyes, a lawn, somewhere else. The memory is a physical sensation, a phantom feeling of cool, wet grass on the skin, the faint smell of it freshly cut. There is a sound, a rhythmic ticking of a sprinkler casting an arc of water. It is a complete fragment of another world, vivid and total. What was that? The question is a flicker of confusion, a ghost of coolness on the skin that vanishes almost as soon as it is felt. The effort required to hold the image, to place it, is monumental, and the mind simply lets it go. The fragment dissolves. The gray light of the beach rushes back in, absolute and unchanging. The green is gone, leaving nothing behind but a deeper sense of exhaustion. I try to follow the ghost of that green memory, to trace it back to its source. A dull pressure builds behind my forehead from the effort. I search for a place that is not this beach. A house. A street. A town. The words are there, familiar shapes in the mind, but they arrive empty, refusing to fill with light or detail. The sensation is of reaching for something solid in the dark and finding only more air. I focus on a single word, an anchor, home. I can feel the shape of the word, but the meaning has been hollowed out. It is an empty box. I cannot conjure the image of a single door, a specific room, a familiar face. My mind is a frustrating blankness where a picture should be. The concept is gone. With no past to fill it, my mental landscape gives way, and the gray, featureless sand seems to expand, flooding everything. The word means nothing. The past is no longer accessible. There is only the sand, the smoke, and the litter. My gaze settles on my own arm, lying motionless on the gray sand. There is no sense of ownership, only observation. It is an object with a specific texture, skin, covered in a fine layer of dust, and it contains other materials, bone and muscle. Next to the hand lies another object, a piece of twisted, rusted metal. My mind makes no distinction between them. This thing is here. That thing is there. The thought is a simple inventory. My own weight is a dull, constant pressure, pinning this body to the ground. The impulse to move is absent, a forgotten language. The man himself, who was no more than litter, was not an observation about others. It was a simple description of my own state. My consciousness is a still point located somewhere behind the eyes, quietly recording the arrangement of things. One of those things happens to be me. I close my eyes. The light goes, but nothing changes. The sound is the same, a low hum punctuated by a distant, rhythmic thud. The air tastes of copper and salt. The vibrations from the ground are constant, moving through the sand and into my bones without interruption. With sight gone, the boundary begins to dissolve. The sharp grit pressing into my back is no longer a separate surface, it feels like an extension of my own skin, the particles merging with me. There is no longer a distinction between the body and the world. The deep, rumbling pulse from the mortars is my own. The dry, dusty sand in my mouth is my own substance. A final, peaceful inertia settles in, a surrender to the weight of it all. There is no I and the beach, only a single, unified field of quiet sensation. I am not lying on the beach. I am the beach. I am another layer of its matter, another piece of its texture, waiting for the shadows to shift again or for the tide to finally come in and move me. My eyes open again to the same scene, but the air has changed. A coolness begins to settle in, the first sign of the approaching evening. The sun is much lower now, a hazy disk near the horizon, and the shadows it casts stretch out like long, dark fingers across the sand. A breeze, too faint to feel on the skin, is just strong enough to move a single piece of paper. It tumbles slowly, end over end, a fragile, weightless thing drifting silently across the gray expanse. I watch its slow, erratic journey without interest, just another piece of litter in motion. It finally comes to a gentle stop, resting against the canvas of a broken pack. It's stopped. The thought is empty. The quietness continues. My body remains completely still, one more shape among the many, waiting in the long, dark shadows.